Good morning. Our spiritual discipline for this third week of Lent is called Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina is a Latin phrase that means divine reading, and it is a way of reading scripture that Christians have used since the early days of the church. I was first introduced to Lectio Divina in my early 20s while working for a Christian summer camp for teenagers. The staff gathered each morning before camp to practice Lectio Divina as a group. I quickly fell in love with this ancient way to listen to God through scripture. There are a variety of ways to practice Lectio Divina, but I want to share with you the steps that I learned many years ago. First of all, a few tips to practice Lectio Divina. These tips come from a book by Tony Jones called The Sacred Way. First of all, he says, use a Bible that is easy to read. So a version that you can easily understand or prefer. The second tip he gives is to find a time of day and a place where you can have silence and where you are most awake, when you are most awake. And then the third tip is to choose your scripture passage, and any passage will do, but a psalm or a gospel reading are a great place to start. Keep the number of verses small. So you're not going to read an entire chapter with this practice, but only a few verses, maybe 3 to 5 verses. Okay, with Lectio Divina, you are going to read the same passage of scripture 3 times, each time followed by a minute or so of silence. With the first reading, you read the text slowly, preferably out loud, and try to listen as if you are hearing these words for the first time. Follow the reading with silence, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And during the silence, you're going to meditate on what you have just read. Now, as far as the silence goes, I sometimes use a timer for the silence. I found that if I don't time the silence, that instead of thinking about the scripture I just read, I'm thinking about, I wonder how long I've been sitting here in silence. So I usually just set a timer for 1 to 3 minutes, totally up to you if you want to do that or how long you want your silence to be. Then it's time for the second reading. You're going to slowly read the same passage again. This time, though, pay attention to the word or maybe phrase that jumps out at you as you read the scripture. And in the silence that follows the second reading, you want to focus on that word or phrase. Just say it over and over again in your head during that moment of silence. The third reading, once more, you read that same passage slowly. But in the silence that follows this third and final reading, you want to ask God to reveal to you why that particular word or phrase stuck out at you. What might God be saying to you through that word or phrase that jumped out at you? And that is what you sit with in the silence after the third reading. When you're done, if you have practiced Lectio Divina with someone else or with a group, you can share together what it was that you learned, what you heard in the scripture. If you are by yourself, then I recommend that you journal what your thoughts are. Journal what stuck out at you, what you think God might be saying to you through that word or phrase. About the practice of Lectio Divina, Kathleen Norris writes, "It is not a method, but rather a type of free-form, serious play." I love this. I love thinking about Lectio Divina as a form of play. This practice is to be enjoyed. Give yourself some grace. You cannot do it wrong. If you have a life-changing revelation, great. If you hear nothing at all, that is fine too. God is honored when we spend time listening to God through scripture. Our seeking and our listening is a gift to God and a gift to ourselves, whether or not we hear something new. If you would like to practice Lectio Divina in a group, I want to invite you to the midweek devotion and prayer gathering that happens on Wednesdays at 6:30, right now on Zoom. We are practicing Lectio Divina together each Wednesday night, all throughout the rest of Lent. And we would love to have you join us and practice this with us and see what you think about it. There's no pressure to share if you don't want to, but it is very interesting how several people listening to the same passage, when we share, very often we hear different things, different words and phrases jump out to different people. And so it's really amazing and fun and a learning and growing experience to do this practice with the group and to learn from each other and hear what God is saying to each other. So I think you will, if you're interested in this at all, I think you would enjoy this. So come join us on Wednesday nights. You can find the link to that Zoom and the weekly email that I send out on Wednesdays. A note to Pastor Dixie is what this, a note from Pastor Dixie is what the subject will say. So click on the link and join us. We'd love to have you. Blessings, friends, as we continue our journey through Lent and as we continue walking with Jesus together. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon.